Hey gang, thanks for joining us. This is episode 2 of Get Help Hangouts. My name's Trevor Beck. I'm one of the 3 moderators for the Get Help Hangouts. Before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping, just so you guys are knowing what's going on. This time around, we're actually using the Google Event tool. And one of the advantages that Google Events gives us is that we can have these extra pieces part of the Hangout on air. So when you've seen the question and answer tool, the applause tool, the showcase tool, those are all part of the Hangout when you use the Hangout on air. If you were trying to start this thing from a YouTube event, you don't get those tools, which is the mistake that we made last week. I'm just going to do a quick screen share here to show you some of the stuff that to address with you. Whoops, present to everyone. There we go. So here's our hosts are going to be Nick and Allison and myself. Allison is away today, but she will be joining us again. And my mouse won't be working. Come on, there we are. And here we go. Slowly but surely, we're going to get through this. So as I mentioned before, we're going to use the showcase tool. That's the little banners that are off on the right. And I'll be pushing different links out there as we come to those different sections. Right now, we've got one for our Google Plus page. We also have the Google Hangouts show notes. I recommend you click on that and make sure that you get yourself onto the episode 2 show notes, because there's a link in that document that you're going to be using to take you to information where you're going to be downloading spreadsheets and templates and stuff like that. So make sure you have that open for that part. If you're watching this on the YouTube and you want a bigger screen, just click on the YouTube link there. You can then go to the YouTube page and you can actually make it a full screen if you wish to go that path. Comments, we're going to be taking the comments into the information, the comments of the event. You'll also notice at the top, goo.gl/slide/86 lowercase j 9 lowercase db. That is using Google Slides, the new audience tool that just came out last month. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's where you can go put in your questions, vote up and down questions that you see that other people have voted down, and we'll take a look at that after during the course of the show. And last things I mentioned before, bit.ly/gethelp show notes is where we keep all our show notes for all of our shows there. As I mentioned before, my name is Trevor Beck. I am the Google evangelist here at a university in Canada, MacEwan University, and I am going to try and stop. For some reason, my screen won't let me stop. Here we go. And I'm going to let the other 2 people introduce themselves. So, Eileen, why don't you start first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Eileen Huang, and I am a program manager on the Google for Education team. I work with school districts across the U.S. on adopting Google tools, so that includes Google Apps for Education and Chromebooks, but typically my conversations revolve around curriculum in general and making sure that we are here on the Google for Education team to support you in achieving your curricular goals.
And I'm Nick Cusimano. I am a theater and film teacher and pusher of education technology. And I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and happy to be here again.
Yes, and so the background's happy too. Okay, so we're going to take a look at our agenda. The first thing we want to try is talk about what's new. So we'll just take like 5 or 10 minutes, go through some of the things that are new there. We're talking about the Google Q&A and the slides. Nick, do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Sure. This great new tool that Google has added in is it's very similar to the Q&A tool that's with Hangouts, but now you can use it for slides. So you can use that to help you while you're presenting, and it's really neat. If you look on the video that Google has shared with the science fair, great for questions at the end of a presentation that the person can keep kind of going on, but then they can see. And if multiple people like something on that, they can plus that up. So then, 12 people have said, that's a great question. Please answer this at the end of the presentation. And then so you know what questions, if you're a limited time, how you want to answer them. There's also a laser pointer tool in there. And I think that now has hit both rapid and scheduled release, so it should be appearing in both GAF domains, and it's already in your personal Google accounts.
if you have a large screen TV and you start using the laser pointer, will your cat chase after that? That would be kind of fun to find out.
That I don't know. I'm not a cat person, so you may want to experiment that with your own large screen TV.
I'm a dog person, but if someone else can find out, that would be good. Other things that came out recently is the ability to take your graphs that you create or your charts that you create in your spreadsheets, and you can embed them in your Google Doc. And the nice thing about that is that data is still connected. So in the spreadsheets, if you go make a change, just like the chart normally would do in spreadsheet, it updates itself. It will also update in your Google Doc. So it's another step closer to bringing in a functionality that we're used to seeing in Microsoft products. Now we can do that with a live connection.
And I think what's really cool about that is, let's say you're putting some live data on the web, you could do just one screen slide, and it could update as you go. So you get that nice embed feature that you get built in with slides, but your data is live. So I think that's a really kind of cool feature that's available there.
Nick, do you want to address Android apps?
Yes, so coming soon, which is kind of really excited because here's my hope is there's some, so Android apps and the Chrome OS, you will be able to use Android's apps in the Chrome OS. So if you want to install maybe a video editor that's only on your phone, then maybe that might be something that might work on the Chromebook, which will give you some more options, because I think, to me, that's one area that I would like some improvement in. But explain everything, a lot of things that are just Android only, now you can use on a Chromebook, because as schools go to large Chromebook use, you want to have, it gives you the best of both worlds. And so that is coming in the near future. That was announced at Google I/O, which was just last week.
Yeah, and one of the nice things is it will be backward compatible with a lot of hardware. So I have an old Chromebook 11-inch, I think it's R11 or R33 or something like that, but it's down listed as going to be available. Even with my 2 gigs of RAM, I'll be able to run the Android apps as well as the other stuff. So that's very exciting. Nick, what about Spaces?
Spaces is this kind of cool thing that Google has just released. They just keep on surprising us. It's kind of a central place for you to share different web things that you like. I don't know, real technical term. So if you want to watch a video together or want to share a document, I think in the education realm it's going to be really useful as portfolios or class discussions. So in your Gmail account or your regular Gmail accounts, it's available now, and hopefully it'll be coming to education sometime in the future.
One of the nice things that I liked about it is as a use case was breakout rooms. If you wanted to, if we're doing something online like this, I could easily say, okay, you three create your own breakout rooms and go and discuss whatever it is. So Spaces is kind of cool. Yeah. Okay, so I got a couple things that I wanted to talk about for really quickly. Synergyse is an extension that you can get in the store. It's actually not just an extension, it's actually a whole service. And it will walk you through as a help file or a help system for whatever app you're using. And the nice thing about it is it actually takes over your screen and your computer and walks you through the steps. So you're actually working with live data on a live screen doing whatever you want. So the other day I was trying to figure out how to do pivot tables because I know all about them, but I cannot get it up here. And so I said, tell me about pivot tables. And it said, okay, great, we'll create this new tab. And then it populated it with a bunch of text, and it says, okay, select this, do this command, and as I'm going through the steps, it actually goes one step, then it waits for me to click on something, then it moves to the next step. So if you haven't checked it out, do so, because Google bought it. It's now free for everyone. It used to be a paid service, but it's free, and it's so neat.
Yeah, I met the creator of it at a summit one time, and he was really amazing. And this is just, thank you, Google, for putting this out there, because I got a demo version of it, or got it on my account, but my school district's 18,000 that's doing that per kid cost, or I can't remember if it was per kid or adult, but it was outside our budget. And now we don't have to worry about it, and it's a great tool for those people who want to learn or get stuck. So thank you, Google and Synergyse.
Yes, yes. One other last thing under the new item is the Google Education Trainer website group discussion. Okay, so we've all been working on this, and we all know the challenges of just putting a whole bunch of posts in there and not being able to find stuff. So if you haven't gone yet, go back to the site there. There's a post at the very top. We're asking people's input on how they want to organize it. We're going to do a couple of things. We're going to look at first putting in questions. So when you're filling out your post, if you actually in the field just type in 2 keywords, it's going to be able to search all the other posts before you even do anything, which is very cool. So that way we can get rid of that duplication where everyone's, obviously the same topics keep coming up. So that'll be the questions component of it. The other nice thing about the questions is when other people answer, everyone can go in and vote those answers up and down. So as more and more people go in there, we can get rid of the chuff and get the good ones float to the top, so we can get those. And eventually, as one of the moderators can go in and pin that as this is the definite answer. You don't need to read through all these other answers for that. So we will be doing that hopefully in the next week. The other thing we're looking at is categories, and so we need your input and your feedback. So please go to that post. There's a link there to a Google form. I froze for a sec mentally, not on the screen. There's a Google form there. If you fill that out, it'll give us an idea of how we want to organize these categories. This isn't my group. It's not Nick's group. It's all of our groups. So we want to get feedback from as many people as we can before we start moving forward with doing those kind of changes. We're going to make some mistakes. We're going to find things that do work, find things that don't work, but at least it's given us a start to move forward and getting that stuff organized. And that's it for the all-new section of it. The next thing we want to do is do our Googler focus. So what we're trying to do is every episode we're going to want to focus on somebody from Google, someone who actually works on Google, who actually does stuff there. Eileen is one of those Googlers, and in fact, she's with us there. And Eileen, why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Eileen, and I've been on the Google for Education team for about 2 years now. Education was always something that I've been passionate about. To give you a little bit of background on my schooling and upbringing, I did my K-12 at LAUSD, so that is Southern California, the second largest district after New York City, I believe, in Southern California. So I did my K-12 there. I can't say that it was, the most rich in resources, but I think in terms of coming from such a place, in the neighborhood that I did, I was so grateful for the opportunities in terms of a support network and how important education is for a student's future and how access to education is so important. And so when I went to college, I went away for college, studied psychology, but I did a lot of my research in education and in terms of inner city schools and how they have access, what are some of the ways that they learn. And after I came out, I was at a company called IXL Learning, and I was an account manager there, did trainings with teachers and principals on how to implement tools in the classroom. How do we use these tools to support some of the learnings that you have, some of the goals that you have? And at my current role, and it's an extension of that, I work typically with at a district level, working a bit on strategy, a bit on outreach, on figuring out if these are your top goals, what are some of the ways that we might go about achieving that. So it's a great role, I think, because it's very aligned to my values and what I feel is really important. And at the end of the day, those are our students. And I hope that in this role, I can somehow make an impact for students at scale by helping as many districts as possible. So I'm here today to answer some of the questions that you guys have, some of the common questions that come up, and hopefully bring some insight from other districts that I've worked with into the conversation.
Okay, thanks. And here again is the URL, goo.gl/slides/ 86J9DB. And keep in mind that those letters are case sensitive, so they have to be all lowercase. So goo.gl/slides/86 lowercase j 9 lowercase db. And if you can put your questions there, and we will talk to Eileen some more, and then we'll come back to those questions. So go ahead, Nick.
So Eileen, let's say a district's considering going Google Apps for Education, and they give you a call. How do you start your discussions with them?
I figure out where they are at currently. So I typically like to understand the size of the district, how long they have been with Google Apps, what is their knowledge with Google Apps for Education, and then what they hope to achieve. So some districts will want Google Apps for Education for collaboration because they know that there's real-time collaboration with the tools, and you can share with other teachers, with other students, and that is a huge piece of it. But what I really try to drill down on is your curricular goals and how these tools are there to achieve some of those goals, because then it ties into accessibility and it ties into perhaps like the device, because we get it from different angles. Like we want to get started with Google. That could mean Google Apps, that could mean Chromebooks, but I always want to bring it back and ask, why are you doing this? And then let's figure out, are these the right tools? And how can we implement these tools in a way where your teachers feel supported as you are rolling these tools out? Do you have the infrastructure that is in place so that when you do roll out Google Apps for Education, that it's going to be seamless, that when teachers and students are on their devices accessing this, it's going to be a good experience for them. And that is a conversation on the technical side, making sure that they have all their ducks in a row before we get into the curricular piece. Most of my conversations are centered around curriculum rather than technology. Like, I am not the best person to talk about networks and things like that. I can't give you advice on which Chromebooks you would pick in terms of the specs that you need. But what I can tell you is how devices are being used, for example, and give examples that how other districts have found success, and then see what kind of situation are we looking at and what you hope to achieve. So some scenarios would be, for example, I would like a blended learning classroom. I would like more student-teacher touch points. I want to create a space that fosters creativity for my students, that they can really go out and explore the things that they are interested in. How can I do that? What are some of the things that other districts have done? And so it's providing that initial guidance that is technical in terms of step-by-step setup, connecting you with other districts that may have gone through similar situations, providing you with internal resources that we've developed, providing you with resources that we have access to from other school districts. There is a great one that I share out a lot. It's called Managing 1,200 Chromebooks. And so it's a school district that they have 1,200 Chromebooks, obviously, but they've got their best practices and they've listed out their settings for their management console. The management console has hundreds of settings, and it's an enterprise level tool that our businesses use. So the question then becomes, how, as a school environment, where we have to do a lot with students and privacy and security and filtering and all of that, how do we make sure that it's set up in the best way possible? And that is one resource that I like to send out. And if schools or districts are looking for something a little bit more in-depth, we have connections with partners that we've worked with, that we've gotten feedback from other districts that have worked with them, that have a great experience, and those are the ones that we would recommend. So the best way for us to help the districts is just to understand where they're at along the process of reaching their goals and what do they hope to achieve. And sometimes they come with us with not a defined goal in mind, and we flesh that out too. We figure out and sit down, let's get the right people and have this conversation to make sure curriculum and technology are aligned, that we are working towards the same goal and provide a unified team when we go out to achieve this. So that's out there.
I really like that Google has included the curricular focus, because sometimes I think we sometimes in education we have these phases where this is the coolest thing and that's the coolest thing, but it still comes back to the curriculum and what do we want our students to be able to do on their own once we send them out in the world. And I think it's really great that Google has not forgotten to include that into the equation, and that's where they start. So thank you for that. I think it's a great...
I wish I could say it's on me, but...
well, thank you for being...
I'm actually excited about the resources you mentioned for, so like, you know, a lot of times we have a lot of teachers who end up becoming the administrator, and they really don't understand that. And I think I see all these posts all the time of, oh yeah, we created 2 organizational units, we did one for students, we did one for faculty, or sorry, for staff, and then now we wish we'd put them all into one and stuff like that. And
right.
I think those kind of initial discussions, I mean, the problem is that we have this, you know, a little information is dangerous. So we read some of the stuff about, okay, so I know how to create an OU and I know how to add people in there, but it's the practical stuff that people trip up on, and I think that's really cool that you guys can bring in that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we definitely try. We definitely try to help along with some of those initial setup to make sure that it's set up in a way that is done with best practices in mind, for example, which is why we give some, like we always say, of course, it's going to be different for every district, and that's why it's important to assess your needs before you move forward. But once we have that identified, then we can go into some of the more practical aspects and get that aligned and get that together. And as much as we can help, we provide resources, we talk through it, and then there's also a wealth of partner resources too if we want something a little bit more in depth.
Go ahead, Nick.
You can go ahead, Trevor.
Oh, I was going to, okay. So I was just going to say, I've got a question here. Can I put that on the screen? Are we good to do questions now?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, what are some of the most common challenges when working with an institution that already uses Microsoft 365 and wants to continue access to both tool sets? Yeah,
so Nick and Trevor, you guys can probably jump in on this one too, especially if you've worked with teachers who have access to both. Honestly, I don't know if I would be the right person to answer this question just because I don't work with directly with teachers, but what we have found is not so much Office 365, it's things like Exchange that comes up that they're used to one format or a way of doing things and understanding where certain things are, and then making a switch to a new tool and then thinking about, you know, it's another process. Like I taught for a while, and it's that same thing for me. If I already had my flow and I'm busy grading papers and essays and then inputting grades, but I have my system, like why should I use something different? It's usually that change that we see is most difficult. But I think this question in particular is an institution that wants to continue to use both set of tools, which is totally fine. I don't know if, in terms of challenges, what I've seen so far, the one thing that does come to mind is maybe being used to a set of features in one tool that may not align perfectly well for features on the other tool. So expecting a parallel between the two, that's not going to happen.
And I can kind of address this a little bit because we were in a similar situation. So we went Google Apps for Ed, but kept our Outlook for another year, and then we switched that over. So one thing I would say is there's a Google Active Directory Sync. So if you have your OUs already set up and want to use, kind of keep that going, there is that tool that Google gives you. There's also the YAMM tool on the education side, but don't ask me how to use it, but I know it's helpful. And I think, the one thing that it's just notifications and look in your extensions. That's the biggest question I got when we switched, is they like the little mailbox at the bottom, and I found a extension that helped put that back for them, and that was the biggest thing. I think it also it's just so much better for sharing and all those other things. But I am definitely more biased on the Google end. But I totally understand. You're trying to meld that IT department and the curriculum department together, and there are tools out there, and there are also partners like Amplified IT and other groups that can kind of help you through that process if you do not have the experts within your own district.
Can I ask a clarifying question that may show my ignorance in some of the competitive tools?
You know what? If you don't know the answer to a question, there's no such thing as so don't worry about it.
I mean, my understanding of Microsoft 365 is like Docs, or not Docs, what is it called? Word, and then like Excel and
PowerPoint,
right? And then does it encompass anything else?
OneNote is probably the only slightly different tool.
It sounds like tool specific. Yeah, if you're thinking about migrating from a Microsoft environment to a Google environment where we're thinking about like a larger data migration, and that kind of brings it up to a more like a systematic way of doing things and organizationally. We could potentially talk about some of those things like from a Google end, but we typically do recommend that you work with a partner, especially if you're doing a large migration. Like Amplified IT that was mentioned, like Promevo is also a really good one. If we're thinking about along those lines of making a full or even partial migration and how we can make those two things seamless. And you might be getting your mail from one place, but then you want to make sure that it goes through and you still have it at a different place. But yeah, I find that the flow and making sure that the uptime is good while you're making this transition is something to look out for. But once you have the tools in place, you can completely use the tools in conjunction with each other.
Yeah, it's something that is available, and you can have both running at the same time. I think within your district is what are the benefits of running both, and is it just better to let go of the Microsoft end, or
a year, because we've got both running, and we are moving over to Outlook for our email and calendaring, but we're still keeping all the Google stuff except for the Gmail, and so yeah, ask me in a year, I'll tell you what it's like blending. I know I'm aware of your time there, Eileen. So thank you very much for taking the time to join in and answer some questions for us. We really appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was so much fun, and I'm always happy to come back to join again. And if there are additional questions, you guys have my info, and reach out, and then I can also shoot back any information that I have on my end.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you again.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Any other thoughts there you want to throw in?
I just think we'll connect you to. We'll put some of the resources that the Google for Education team has for transitioning into the notes, and just know that it is available there, because I think sometimes we forget that Google has that whole thing. You can get on the phone or connect through the internet and tap into that whole team, because it's something we don't see just every day, if that makes sense. But they have that whole part built in, and it's great that it's there and available for us, and that it focuses on curriculum too. I think that's a great service that they offer for districts.
Okay, cool. Okay, here comes the exciting part. Spreadsheets. And Nick's heard me say this a number of times. I love spreadsheets, but I don't touch numbers. I'm not a big numbers fan. But what we're going to do, though, is I'm going to teach some of you guys some stuff about some spreadsheets, some basic functions. To start off with, though, that show notes document that I sent or I gave to you guys, it has some information in it. I'm just going to try and pull that up on my screen. Oh, I just realized when I put the windows on my Mac on two different windows, it doesn't see one of those windows, so I have to move it over. So just give me a second. That's interesting to know.
So while Trevor's doing that, he's going to show us a lot of tools, because a lot of times we use forms to collect data, and forms, you have that data. Where does it go? It goes into the spreadsheet. So now you can use, now you have that data, but it's a bunch of lines, and what do you do with it? How can you make it useful? So he's going to show us a couple of different ways of making it so that our life is easier, and we can have it do it for us. And to simplify that, so there's a lot of cool things that he is going to show us, and I have one or two things up my sleeve also towards the end of the show.
Okay.
You all set?
Yep. All right. So this is the show notes document that you guys have access to. There's a link in there. Talks about, or it says Behavior School for Bad Data. This is a course or a workshop that I run, and the idea behind it is to go in and work with data that's already been supplied to you. So, for example, this is a spreadsheet that often we deal with. It's a list of names, of emails, a bunch of address data, and we need to try and make sense of it all. The worst thing I always hate, and I used to work in a marketing department, and we used to have these special events, and we get these lists of names, and I always get someone approaching me and saying, hey, Trevor, can you go and take this list of names, can you go and correct all the spelling? So you'll notice the B and the S in here, the L and the B down here, they are not properly capitalized. And you used to spend all your time sitting there highlighting each of these words and stuff like that to get that done. We're going to use something called functions. Functions are part of spreadsheets. They basically are kind of like a little command that does one simple thing, depending on what the function is. And as you put in your data in here, you just put in your data straight in. With a function, you would put in an equal sign to start off with. Now, I should note what I've done in the document that you guys have, because it's created a copy for you. Nick, did you get a copy for yourself?
I have not clicked it open yet.
Okay, so I'll let you play along when you're ready.
Sure.
Up here in the tops, I've actually put in, using the comments, the different functions that we're going to use in there. So if you need to, you can always refer to that. I've also put in some hidden sheets. So you'll see sheet 1 master. Anything with the word master on it is the sheet that I'm working on in a completed form. So you can take a look to see what's happened. So let's get back to our fun stuff. So I am just going to enlarge my screen here a little bit better. So there, whoops. So here it is. Here is A1 is Bessie Schwartz. So I'm going to go into here. I'm going to type in equals to split. Sorry, wrong one. Equal to proper. Because what I want to do is properly capitalize everything. Google actually pops up this little information bar to tell you, hey, I notice you're trying to deal with this function. Click on it, and I will take you through the steps. Well, in brackets, I need you to put in what text is it you want to capitalize. Well, the text I'm looking at is A2. So I'm just going to go A2, close the bracket, and hit Enter. Notice Bessie here is now completely capitalized in the proper way. If I take this, and just by clicking on this little small anchor here, I can do a quick drag down. I can go through 500 of these items, and look at that. It's gone through and done all of them. So we were Leah here, Joel. These have all been correctly done. So 500 names, bang, done just in a second. Now, what often happens when I was working is they would go, hey, that looks really nice, Trevor, but we want to do a letter. And so, it's nice to have Bessie Schwartz on the name tag, but when we write a letter out, we want the letter to say, Dear Bessie. So can you copy and paste those names into 2 different columns? And again, when you're taking 500 names or 1,000 names, you're going, double click, copy, paste, and it's kind of a hassle. So the next function we're going to talk about is split. What split does is it says, what's the text you want, followed by a comma. What's the delimiter, which is what do you want to separate on, and do you want to split it up between everyone that you see? Well, I want this one here, I2. So I'm just going to type in I2, comma. Now, what's the delimiter? Notice how Google's actually highlighting the next step to let me know and gives me a sample of what it is. Any text that we're referring to has to be in quotation marks. We want to split on the space there, so I just put quotation, space, close quote, that comma. You want to split by each one. Well, in this case, we're going to say true. Now, Bessie Schwartz has been separated into 2 different columns, and I can just click and drag down and be done with that.
Wow.
That is the cool power of that split stuff. I love this. Total pledges, that's pretty simple. We just go equal to, and this piece here. So it's 5 laps. So let's say this person pledged $32. Actually, no, we'll come back to that. We'll just leave that. So I can do a times 32, as in dollars. I go like that. That's 160. Now, if I start to drop down, the numbers are going to change because, well, you'll see here the numbers are changing because it's actually pulling this stuff in here properly. So G5 times 32. And again, I can fill down the whole thing. But what's kind of fun to do is, if there's text all the way down this row, I just double click on that little square and it automatically fills down until it finds a space. So that way you don't have to click and drag for 4,000 letters. You just double click and it fills all that up. How cool is that?
Cool. I'm impressed. What more do you have to show me?
All right.
Oh wait, there's more.
there's lots more. It's just a best. So I want a phone number. Now, when we're doing math, that's when you're going to use the plus sign. So if I put 4 plus 3 in here, it's going to equal 7. If I was to point to 5 plus this one here, it's going to equal to 11. So the math part is pretty straightforward. But you can't do math when you want to add things in here. So I want to put together these two items here. Math isn't going to work, so I can't use a plus sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use concatenation. And there's actually a couple of ways of doing concatenation. The simplest way is like this. I want this cell, and I want to add it with this piece. And when I'm done, it brings it all together. And I can actually use that and sign number of times. And quite often when I'm building heavy-duty functions, or not functions, formulas and stuff, I'll use this and maybe 2 or 3 times to bring 2 or 3 columns of information together. Now, take a look at the format here. I don't want that format. I want to make sure that there's a dash in between there. So I go up to my formula here. So there's C2. And I want to add, whoops, always loves to do this, stop it. And I want to add a dash. So I have to put that in quotations. And then I want this here. And I get a little preview window here when I'm working with my calculations. So let's go ahead and do that. Nick, what do you see wrong with this?
Is there an extra space in there?
There's a space. Someone has gone through and put a space at the beginning of all 5,000 of my list. So I actually have to go through and highlight that and delete that 5,000 times. Or do I? There's actually a cool little function. So we're going to deal with this D2 here. There's a cool little function called trim. Trim. I just put that item in brackets. And here's trim saying, what's the text you want? So this is the text I want. So I'm combining a couple of different things together. So in concatenation, I'm saying 403, then a dash, then D2, but trim any spaces on the front or the back end of that piece. So now, when I go and do this, all those spaces are now fixed and completed. How cool is this?
That's pretty cool.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. And I can go all day. There's lots of stuff, but I'm not going to go too much farther. So postal code. In the kind of the scenario I have here, I'm going to be having a people driving around to pick up the pledges. Now, this is the map of Edmonton where I live. Our postal codes are different than your guys's. We actually have a prefix and then a suffix. So there's a prefix of all these ones here. So these 3 here, these 3 here, these 3 here. So I need to take that information and split it up between front and back. And what I want to do is I just want the first 3 pieces of, where's my budget? Where's my prefix? Where's my postal code? Did I lose something?
N.
Oh, I'm farther down, under F here. So I just want those first 3 here. So all I need to do is go into here and I say, you know what? I just want the left, start in the left. Whoops. If I can spell correctly, left. What's the string? That is, what did we say it was? F2. How many letters do you want, or how many items do you want, characters do you want? I just want the first 3. So there's T5Z, which is there. And again, I can just quickly fill that down. And there's all the prefixes for that piece of information. And you can use left, you can use right, you can use a whole bunch of other things. The nice thing about this is now we have this control over this document, and we can decide what we're going to do with it. And it doesn't matter what format the data is in, we can split them up, we can properly capitalize. And if anytime that you do like a form where you get people to put their names in, someone's always going to put their name in wrong. And so it's going to show up wrong on their certificate. So when I have my certificates, I let people put in their names, but then I go in, I throw proper on the document, or sorry, the cells, and that way their names will always be capitalized. I can't do anything about it if their names are spelled wrong or anything like that, but I mean, at least I can do that much. And that's all I'm going to do for today, because I think if you can, play with that, there's so much strength in that. And in my mind, that's kind of the epitome of everything, or sorry, epitome of what every person at any school, at anyone using spreadsheets should know how to do those things. There's lots and lots more powerful functions and stuff. We'll talk more about that down the road. But play with that, give us a chance to play with that, and you can already see how you can make use of that. Nick, you had something you want to say?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen real quick, and oops. And so I wanted to talk about one. There's a cool website. So sometimes you have to deal with made-up data because we're dealing with students and we don't want to use actual student data. There's a website called Makaroo, and if you need 1,000 rows or less, it's for free. And so if I wanted to click add a field, I click over here. I now have first name, last name, male, female, hex color, ICD-9 codes, ISBN, latitude, longitude, last names, scenario, numbers, shirt sizes, so time zones, ton of things that it makes up the title or makes up the information for you, so it's random and you protect the innocent. So earlier I pulled some data from it, and I wanted to show this cool add-on because what I, like this past week, we're setting up a teacher Google camp. We're calling it Camp Google Waka. And so there is this really cool add-on. It's called Power Tools. And so we're just going to go through that process because I want to, this is my list of all our faculty, and then this is the sheet 2 is going to be the faculty who has actually filled out the Google form. So I'm going to go over here to data, oops, and then I don't want to merge sheets, but it gives you all these different things: remove duplicates, compare two sheets. I'm going to use compare two sheets, random generator, all these different things that are available to you. And so I'm going to select sheet 1, and then it's selected the A column for me, and then I'm going to compare it to, I have to go back a little bit, I'm going to compare it to sheet 2, and we're going to go with, we did that right. So we're in the, I've selected those 2 rows, and I want them to compare them. And just go through that part. Oh. So it's found 6 duplicate values between the 2 that have appeared. Now if I reverse it and go the other way, then you have a lot of options available to you. I'm clicking through this too quickly, or if you want to find unique values between the 2. So that is called Power Tools from AbleBits. Lots of different things available to you to use that for. And so have fun exploring that. And I just...
That's very, very cool. I can see a lot of use of that back and forth. Yeah. Thanks, Nick. That's pretty much it for the show. So we're at about 1:45, so we're going to kind of stop there. Again, just a reminder, if you have any questions after watching this, please go ahead and put them in the event page or else within the YouTube page if you want to put your questions there. That way we can get a hold of them. The question form that we had set up for the Hangouts will not be available. That's only during live time, and no one's put in any questions, so we don't need to stop right now. Other than that, we will see you guys next episode.
See you soon, and hope to meet some of you at ISTE. Say hi if you see one of us.
Okay.
Thanks again. Bye.